Daniel sat in his small living quarters staring at the mess around him. His desk was covered with old tools, half-finished devices, and scattered papers. The floor had spare parts lying around, and the shelves were stacked with earth trinkets he had collected over the years. It was not the kind of place anyone would call tidy. Living on a trade station far from Earth meant that he had little time for cleaning, and honestly, he did not care much for order. But even Daniel had to admit it was getting out of control. The space station was home to thousands of beings from different worlds. Humans were a minority here, but they were not completely unknown. The station was a hub of trade and transport, where cargo ships came and went carrying goods from far-off colonies. Daniel worked as a mechanic and technician. He fixed things for passing merchants, and he made enough credits to live decently. Yet he often forgot to look after his own home. That was why, after weeks of putting it off, he finally ordered a cleaning service. He expected a machine. Most cleaning services use drones. Small round robots would hum into the room, vacuuming, wiping, and sorting everything neatly. That was exactly what Daniel wanted, a mindless helper that would do the job without bothering him. So when the doorbell chimed, he opened the door expecting to see a cleaning drone rolling inside. Instead, a tiny figure stood there. She was no taller than his chest, with delicate features and bright eyes that seemed to sparkle with curiosity. Her uniform was neat, simple, and carried the logo of the cleaning service. She had smooth, pale skin with a faint silvery tint that shimmered under the station's artificial lights. Her hair was fine and straight, tied back neatly, and her expression carried a professional calm. Daniel blinked. Hello?" The small alien bowed slightly. "Greetings. My name is Lyra. I have been assigned to handle your cleaning request." Her voice was light, polite, and surprisingly confident for someone so small. Daniel scratched the back of his neck. "Wait, I thought I was getting a drone. Like an actual robot." Lyra tilted her head. "Our company offers both mechanical and organic assistance. I was available, so I came." Daniel looked past her into the hallway, half expecting a robot to appear, but no one else was there. "So you're the maid?" Lyra gave a firm nod. "Yes, may I enter?" Daniel hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Sure. Come in." Lyra walked into the room, her steps quiet and graceful. She scanned the space with quick, sharp eyes, taking in every detail. Daniel suddenly felt embarrassed at the mess. Tools lay scattered across the floor. There were dishes on the counter he had forgotten about. Wires dangled from half-finished devices. He wondered if she would judge him for it. Instead, Lyra simply said, "I understand the task." She placed a small device on the table. It unfolded into a set of compact cleaning tools, brushes, suction units, and even a sorter for small parts. With quick efficiency, she began to tidy up. Daniel watched in silence for a while. She moved faster than he expected, sorting parts by size, stacking papers neatly, and cleaning the floor with practiced ease. Unlike a robot, she seemed to understand what was valuable and what was junk. A drone would have thrown half his tools away, but Lyra carefully placed each one in its proper spot. "You're pretty good at this," Daniel finally said. Lyra glanced up, a small smile touching her lips. "It is my job." Daniel leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Still, most people wouldn't know the difference between a damaged circuit board and one I was planning to repair." "I learn quickly," Lyra replied. She finished stacking the tools and moved on to cleaning the counter. For a few minutes, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of her devices. Daniel studied her with growing curiosity. She was small, yes, but she carried herself with surprising confidence. Her movements were careful, almost too precise, as if she was trained for more than simple cleaning. Her eyes, bright and alert, didn't miss anything. Finally, Daniel asked, "So, Lyra, where are you from?" She paused as if considering her answer. "My people are from a colony on the Outer Rim. We are not well known here." "That explains it," Daniel said. "I've seen a lot of aliens on this station, but I don't think I've ever met anyone like you." Lyra gave a polite nod and went back to work. She didn't explain further, and Daniel didn't push. Still, he felt there was more to her than she was saying. As she worked, she asked questions of her own. "Why do you keep so many Earth items?" "Most humans here prefer to adapt to station life." Daniel chuckled. "Guess I'm sentimental. These things remind me of home. Plus, some of them are useful. Humans like to invent and tinker, you know." He picked up a small mechanical toy, a wind-up car he had built in his spare time. This little thing doesn't do much, but I like it. Keeps my hands busy. Lyra studied the toy with great interest. You built this? Yeah, Daniel said proudly. Nothing special, but it works. He wound it up and set it on the table. The tiny car rolled forward, its wheels clicking softly. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, and Daniel could swear there was real fascination in her gaze. Remarkable, she whispered. Daniel raised a brow. Remarkable? It's just a toy. To you, Lyra said softly, but not to me. She quickly looked away, focusing again on her cleaning. Daniel frowned slightly, puzzled. He had expected a simple cleaning maid, but Lyra was proving to be anything but simple. She was observant, curious, and almost too interested in his inventions. By the time she finished, the room looked cleaner than it had in months. The shelves were neat, the floor spotless, and his tools carefully organized. Daniel looked around, impressed. Wow, you did in an hour what I've been avoiding for weeks. Lyra gave a small bow. I am glad to help, Daniel smiled. Well, I think I'll be requesting you again, if that's okay with you. Her eyes softened for a moment, and she gave a gentle nod. Of course. As she packed her tools, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Something about Lyra didn't quite fit the picture of an ordinary maid. He didn't know what her secret was, but he was sure of one thing. His life on the quiet trade station had just become far more interesting. And Lyra, though silent, glanced at him one last time as she left the room. In her eyes was a look Daniel could not read, a mixture of curiosity, determination, and something else hidden deep within. Whatever it was clear that Lyra had not come to his quarters just to clean.
The next time Lyra arrived, Daniel was ready. He had requested her specifically from the cleaning service, and to his surprise, they agreed without any questions. When the door opened, she stood there in the same neat uniform, her calm eyes meeting his as if nothing unusual had happened the last time. Welcome back, Daniel said with a grin. I hope you don't mind me asking for you again. Lyra tilted her head slightly, as though puzzled. Why would I mind? I was assigned to clean. Yeah, but you do it better than anyone else, Daniel replied. He stepped aside, letting her in. This time his quarters were not as messy as before. Still, there were dishes stacked in the corner and tools scattered across the workbench. Lyra immediately began her work, unpacking her set of compact cleaning devices and moving with the same precise efficiency. Daniel sat at his desk, tinkering with a small device, while keeping an eye on her. It didn't take long before he noticed it again. Lyra's cleaning was not random. She moved in a pattern, checking the walls, corners, and even the ceiling. She scanned areas with her eyes longer than seemed necessary, as if she was studying more than dust. At first, Daniel told himself he was imagining it. But when she paused in front of a panel near the wall and touched it with her fingers, he frowned. Hey, what are you doing there? Lyra turned to him quickly. Cleaning, she said simply. Daniel narrowed his eyes. That panel doesn't get dirty. Trust me, I know. She glanced at the panel again and then stepped away, bowing her head slightly. I apologize. Old habits. I like to check every surface. Daniel let out a small laugh, though the doubt stayed in his mind. You're thorough, I'll give you that. For a while, he said nothing more. He focused on his project, a small communicator he was repairing, but his eyes drifted to her again and again. Lyra wasn't just cleaning, she was observing. She studied his tools, his machines, even the way he set things down. She never touched anything without purpose, yet her attention lingered on objects most people would ignore. When she finally spoke, it wasn't about cleaning at all. Why do humans build so many small devices? She asked softly. Daniel looked up, surprised. What do you mean? Lyra picked up a screwdriver, holding it carefully. These tools, your inventions, they are very small yet very complex. Most species build larger machines. But humans make tiny things that still work. Daniel chuckled. That's just how we are. Humans like detail. We like things that fit in our hands, things we can shape and control. Lyra tilted her head. It seems unnecessary. Yet I find it curious, Daniel shrugged. Guess it's part of our creativity. We don't always build because we need to. Sometimes we build just because we can. Her eyes softened at his words, and she set the tool down carefully. For a moment, Daniel thought she wanted to say more, but instead she returned to cleaning. By the end of the day, Daniel's quarters looked neat again. But his mind was not at ease. Something about Lyra's interest in his devices felt unusual. She wasn't just curious like a child seeing something new. It felt sharper, more focused, as though she was studying him for a reason. The third time she came, Daniel decided to test her. He left one of his devices half open on the table, a small energy cell he was repairing. He purposely placed the tools beside it, as if he had been working before falling asleep. When Lyra entered, she bowed politely and began her usual routine. But Daniel sat quietly, pretending to be tired, while he kept his eyes half open to watch her. She moved quickly, cleaning the counter and shelves, but when she reached the table with the energy cell, she stopped. Her hand hovered over it for several seconds. She glanced back at Daniel, who kept still. Then carefully, she bent down and studied the device. Her eyes scanned the parts, and her fingers twitched as if she wanted to touch it. At last, she whispered something under her breath, words Daniel couldn't understand. Then she placed the tools neatly beside the cell and continued cleaning as if nothing had happened. When Daniel finally spoke, his tone was casual. "You're really interested in my gadgets, aren't you?" Lyra froze for a moment, then replied evenly. "I like to learn. Your devices are unusual to me." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "You know, for a maid, you seem to know a lot about tech." Her hand slowed, and for the first time since he met her, she looked uncertain. "Is that a problem?" she asked quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. "Not unless you plan on stealing them." Lyra lowered her gaze, not answering. The silence stretched, and Daniel felt the air grow heavier. He wanted to press her, to demand an answer, but something in her expression stopped him. She didn't look guilty. She looked conflicted. He sighed and changed the subject. "So do you ever get tired of this job?" Lyra blinked, surprised by the sudden question. "Tired?" "No, it keeps me occupied." Daniel raised a brow. "You could be doing a lot more than cleaning." "I can see it. You're sharp. Too sharp to be dusting shelves all day." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself a small laugh. It was quiet, soft, but real. "Perhaps," she admitted. "But sometimes it is easier to appear simple than to show what you are capable of." Daniel leaned forward, curious. "That's an interesting thing to say." Lyra quickly moved away, continuing her work. "Forget I said it," she murmured. But Daniel didn't forget. Her words stayed with him long after she left. In the days that followed, Daniel noticed more signs. Lyra always glanced at his devices, always studied his work with deep interest. She asked more questions too, about Earth, about human inventions, about why humans pushed themselves to build things others thought impossible. One evening, as she finished cleaning, Lyra stood by the door but hesitated before leaving. Daniel looked up from his desk. "Something on your mind?" She seemed to wrestle with her thoughts before asking, "Daniel, why do humans take risks?" He blinked. "Risks?" "Yes," Lyra said firmly. "I watch you work with dangerous tools, unstable parts. You try again and again, even if you fail." "Why?" Daniel leaned back, thinking. "Because that's how we learn. Every failure teaches us something. If we didn't take risks, we'd never invent anything new." Lyra's eyes softened. She bowed her head slightly, then left without another word. That night, Daniel sat in silence, staring at the door long after she was gone. He realized something important. Lyra was not here just to clean. She was watching him, studying him. And maybe, just maybe, she was hiding a secret he wasn't ready to uncover yet. But whatever her reason was, Daniel couldn't bring himself to be angry. Instead, he felt more curious than ever. Lyra was a puzzle, and he had the strange feeling that solving it would change his life forever. Daniel had been suspicious for weeks now. Lyra came regularly to clean, but cleaning was never all she did. She checked corners, scanned walls with her eyes, and sometimes paused over his inventions as if they held answers only she understood. He told himself maybe she was just curious, but deep down, Daniel knew there was more to it. One evening, after finishing a long repair job in the station's workshop, he returned to his quarters tired but restless. He expected to find Lyra already cleaning, as she often did when his schedule ran late. Sure enough, the door slid open, and there she was. But this time, she wasn't polishing the table or sorting his tools. Lyra stood by the far wall, a small device in her hands. It glowed softly, projecting faint beams of light across the metal surface. Her sharp eyes followed the patterns it created, as though she was mapping something invisible. Daniel froze at the doorway, his heart skipping. For several seconds, he simply watched. The careful, precise way she moved told him this was not cleaning at all. "Lyra," he said at last, his voice calm but firm. She jumped, quickly hiding the device behind her back. Her usual calm expression faltered, replaced by something he hadn't seen before. Fear. "Daniel," she said softly, "you're home early." "Clearly," he replied, stepping inside. He gestured toward her hands. "What's that?" Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time since they met, she hesitated to answer. Daniel closed the door behind him and leaned against it. "Don't tell me it's for cleaning. I've never seen a mop that glows." Her eyes flickered with conflict. She lowered the device slowly and turned it off. The light vanished, leaving only silence between them. "You weren't supposed to see this," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "Then what am I supposed to see? Because right now it looks like you've been spying on me." Lyra's shoulders tensed. She took a breath, then set the device gently on the table. Her voice was quiet but steady when she spoke again. "I am not a maid. At least, not only a maid. My assignment is different." Daniel's brows rose. "Go on." Lyra looked away, her small hands clasped together tightly. "I was sent here by my people. We know humans invent quickly. Too quickly. Many races believe your kind are dangerous because you create without thinking of consequences. My mission was to watch, to learn, and to report if humans were building anything that could threaten the balance of the galaxy." Daniel stared at her, speechless for a moment. "So all this time, you've been spying on me?" Her eyes flickered to his. "At first, yes. That was my duty. I disguised my mission as cleaning so I could be close without raising suspicion." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Well, congratulations. You fooled me." Lyra flinched at the sharpness in his tone. "I never wanted to deceive you," she said quickly. "But it was the only way." He stepped closer, anger and confusion mixing inside him. "And what have you reported? That humans build toys? That I waste my time fixing junk?" Lyra shook her head firmly. "No, I have not reported anything harmful." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Why not?" Her voice softened, filled with something fragile. "Because I do not see you the way others do. I was told to expect recklessness, arrogance, danger. But what I found was different. You create not to destroy, but to understand. You fix things because you care. Even your smallest invention carries thought, patience, and hope." Daniel blinked, caught off guard by her words. He had expected lies, excuses, anything but this. "So what are you saying?" he asked slowly. Lyra looked down at her hands. "I no longer wish to serve my mission as it was given. Watching you has changed my view. I cannot report you as a danger. Instead, I wish to understand more. To learn, not for duty, but for myself." The room fell silent. Daniel stared at her, trying to decide if he could believe her. Finally, he let out a long breath. "You should have told me sooner. I was afraid," she admitted. "If you knew, you might have rejected me. Or worse, turned me in." Daniel crossed his arms. "Maybe, but lying isn't much better." Her head bowed lower. "I know." For a moment, Daniel considered asking her to leave, to never return. Yet as he looked at Lyra, he saw no malice in her eyes, only regret and sincerity. He remembered the way she admired his simple toy car, the way she asked about human risks, the way she seemed genuinely curious. "You said your people fear humans," Daniel said carefully. "Why?" Lyra lifted her gaze, her eyes shadowed by old memories. "Because humans move too fast. In only a few centuries, you reached the stars, built colonies, created machines that others took millennia to design. Some races see that as brilliance. Others see it as danger. My people feared the latter." Daniel nodded slowly. "And they sent you here to confirm it." "Yes, but instead you started to trust me?" Lyra gave a small, almost shy nod. "Yes, you are not reckless. You are careful, thoughtful, different from what I was told." Daniel rubbed his forehead, feeling the weight of her confession. "So what happens now? Are you still planning to spy on me?" Lyra shook her head quickly. "No, I want to make my own choice. I want to see humans for myself, not through the warnings of others." Daniel studied her for a long moment, then let out a sigh. Well, I guess I should be angry. But honestly, I'm just tired and maybe a little curious. Lyra tilted her head. Curious? He gave a small smile. About you. About why you'd risk telling me the truth when you could have kept lying. She hesitated before answering. Because I no longer want to pretend. I feel respect and trust, and I do not wish to lose that. Daniel's smile faded into something more thoughtful. He wasn't sure if he could trust her fully yet, but he saw the honesty in her voice, the way it trembled when she spoke. She wasn't just playing a role anymore. All right, he said finally. If you really want to learn about humans, then stop sneaking around. Just ask me. I'll tell you. Better yet, I'll show you. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, a light of hope shining within them. You would do that? Why not? Daniel shrugged. If you're serious about understanding us, then let's do it the honest way. No more secrets. She bowed her head deeply, her voice trembling. Thank you, Daniel. He gave a small chuckle. Don't thank me yet. Humans can be frustrating. You might regret this. But Lyra's soft smile told him she wouldn't. That night, after she left, Daniel sat alone at his desk, staring at the device she had used earlier. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. It was sleek, advanced, far beyond anything humans could build. If she truly wanted, she could have reported him, maybe even endangered him. Instead, she had chosen honesty. Daniel felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. Lyra had revealed her secret, but he knew this was only the beginning. If her people truly feared humanity, then her choice to stand with him might bring consequences neither of them were ready for. Still, Daniel couldn't deny it. The puzzle was finally starting to make sense. Lyra was not just a maid. She was a scout, a watcher, and now, perhaps, something more. And as he thought of her words, he realized something important. If even one alien could look at humans differently because of him, maybe that meant humanity's story in the galaxy wasn't doomed to fear after all. Ethan woke up earlier than usual the next morning. The air in his small apartment felt different, heavier, as though the weight of decisions was pressing down on him. He had gone to bed thinking about Leora's warning, and the thought had followed him into his dreams. Dreams of flashing lights, strange ships hovering in the sky, and voices speaking in languages he couldn't understand. He rubbed his eyes and tried to shake the unease. Leora was already awake. She was standing by the window, her small frame silhouetted against the faint glow of dawn. Her silver hair reflected the light, making her look otherworldly and fragile. Yet her stance was strong. She turned to him when she felt his eyes. "They are coming," she said quietly. Ethan sat up. "Who is coming?" "The inspectors from my world. They will not just ask questions. They will test you and me to see if I have been truthful. If they believe I have broken the rules, they will take me back. If they think you are a danger, they may act against you too." Her words left a hollow feeling in Ethan's chest. He wasn't afraid for himself, but the thought of her being taken away was unbearable. "You think they'll show up here? At my apartment?" he asked. She nodded. "They will not knock like polite visitors. They will arrive in silence, and suddenly you will see them." Ethan got out of bed, running a hand through his hair. "Then we should be ready. If they come, we don't just stand around. We'll show them you've done nothing wrong." Leora tilted her head at him, her bright eyes softening. Humans are always like this. Quick to prepare, quick to fight even when the odds are impossible. He smiled faintly. "Guess it's in our nature." The morning passed slowly. Ethan tried to keep himself busy by pretending it was just another day, making coffee, fixing small things in the apartment, even sorting through his tools. But each sound outside made him tense. Leora stayed close, sometimes quiet, sometimes asking him about Earth customs. She seemed calm, but he could see the faint tremor in her hands whenever she thought he wasn't looking. By noon, the sky darkened unnaturally, as though a storm was forming out of nowhere. Ethan went to the window and felt his breath catch. A shimmer, like heat rising from asphalt, appeared in the air above the building across the street. It grew wider and brighter until shapes began to emerge from it. "They're here," Leora whispered. 3 tall figures stepped through the shimmer, their bodies wrapped in thin metallic armor that glowed faintly. They were nothing like Leora. Where she was small and delicate, they were sharp and intimidating, with movements that seemed too smooth, almost mechanical. They carried staffs that pulsed with blue light, and their eyes shone like crystals. Ethan backed away from the window. What do we do? Stay calm. Do not show fear, Leora said, though her own voice shook slightly. Moments later, the shimmer flickered again, and the three figures were suddenly inside Ethan's apartment, standing only a few steps away. They hadn't used the door. They simply appeared, silent and imposing. One of them spoke, its voice deep and echoing. Leora, you were summoned back weeks ago. Why have you ignored the command? Leora lowered her head respectfully. Because I found something important here. Something your rules do not understand. The figure turned its glowing eyes on Ethan. The human. Ethan's jaw tightened. Yeah, me. I don't know what you think she's done wrong, but she hasn't harmed anyone. She's been living quietly. Cleaning, helping, learning. The alien leader stepped closer, towering over him. Humans are impulsive and dangerous. They make choices without thinking of the balance. Why should she stay among your kind? Ethan felt heat rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay steady. Because she chose to. Isn't that enough? You say we're impulsive, but we also care. We protect our friends, we fight for them, and we don't abandon them just because a rulebook says so. The other two aliens exchanged glances. The leader studied Ethan as though weighing his words. Then it lifted its staff, and a wave of energy pulsed through the room. Ethan staggered back, his vision blurring for a second. Leora gasped and grabbed his arm to steady him. This is the test, the leader said. If you wish for her to remain here, you must show us the truth of humanity. Ethan gritted his teeth. And how exactly do I do that? The answer came in the form of a glowing sphere that formed in the alien's hand. It floated into the air between them and began to twist and ripple. Images appeared within it, images of chaos. Floods, storms, wars, all terrible moments from human history. Your kind destroys its own world, the alien intoned. Why should we allow one of ours to live among you? Why should she remain in a place so unstable? Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at the images, at the disasters and battles, but then he stepped closer to the sphere. Yeah, that's part of our history. We've made mistakes. But you're only showing half the picture. He raised his hand and touched the sphere. It burned against his skin, but he pushed through the pain. The images began to shift. Now they showed humans rebuilding after the storms, helping each other in floods, soldiers protecting civilians in war zones, doctors saving lives in ruined cities. We fall, Ethan said, his voice firm. But we also get back up. Every time, that's who we are. That's why she's here. Because she saw something in us worth believing in. The sphere flickered, then dissolved into sparks. The room fell silent. The leader's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, then dimmed. It stepped back. Your words carry weight, human. Yet words alone are not enough. If she stays, you must accept responsibility for her. Her safety, her choices, her future. Will you take this burden? Ethan didn't hesitate. Yes, I'll take it. Leora looked at him, her eyes shining with both relief and something deeper, something unspoken. The leader gave a slow nod. Then the choice is made. But know this, if you fail her, we will return. With that, the three figures stepped back into the shimmer, and within seconds, they were gone. The sky outside cleared, and the apartment returned to its ordinary quiet. Ethan sank onto the couch, his legs suddenly weak. Leora sat beside him, her hands clutching his tightly. You risked everything, she whispered. He smiled faintly, though exhaustion lined his face. Guess that's just what humans do. For the first time since he had met her, Leora let herself lean against him, her head resting gently on his shoulder. Outside, the city carried on as though nothing had happened, but inside that small apartment, something had changed forever. Ethan wasn't just her employer anymore. He was her protector, her partner in defiance of the unknown. And though the aliens had left, he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something larger, something that could reshape both their worlds. The apartment was quiet after the inspectors left, but Ethan could not shake the weight of their words. He kept hearing the leader's voice echoing in his head, "If you fail her, we will return." He sat still, staring at the floor while Leora leaned against him. She was light, fragile even, yet in that moment she carried a whole galaxy's worth of consequence. Leora finally lifted her head. You did more than I expected, Ethan. They listened. That is not normal. You should know they rarely bend their rules. Ethan gave a dry laugh. Guess I was lucky. No, she said softly. You were human? That is what they saw. The words made him pause. He thought about what he had shown in the test. The disasters, the tragedies, and then the recoveries. Humanity was far from perfect, but maybe it was that imperfection that gave it strength. The ability to fall and rise again. For the rest of the day, Leora remained close, helping with chores, though Ethan told her she didn't need to. She polished tools, reorganized the small kitchen, even watered the tiny plants on the balcony. She worked quietly, almost peacefully, as if the shadow of the inspectors was already fading. But Ethan knew better. They would be watching. That night, he lay awake long after Leora had gone to her room. The city outside hummed with its usual rhythm, distant cars, faint voices, the occasional bark of a dog. But for him, everything felt sharper. He thought about the responsibility he had accepted. Protecting her was no small task. He was just a mechanic, a man with a modest apartment and simple dreams. But now he carried something bigger. The following morning, Ethan was woken by a soft knock at his door. He frowned. Hardly anyone visited him. When he opened it, he found his neighbor, Mrs. Collins, an older woman who often complained about the noise in the building. Today, however, her face showed worry. Ethan, dear, she said, glancing nervously down the hall. I don't know what I saw last night. Lights, strange shapes outside your window. Are you in trouble? Ethan hesitated, then forced a smile. No, ma'am, just some people checking in on a friend of mine. Mrs. Collins pursed her lips. Be careful, Ethan. This world is strange enough without other things poking around. She left before he could respond. When he turned back, Leora was standing behind him. She saw them? Maybe just a glimpse, Ethan said. But if more people start noticing, it's going to get harder to keep this quiet. Leora lowered her eyes. I never wanted to cause trouble for you. Ethan shook his head. You didn't. Trouble finds me on its own. Always has. Over the next week, small signs began to appear. Flickers of light at the edge of his vision. Hums in the night air that didn't sound like anything mechanical. Once, he swore he saw a figure standing at the end of the street, tall and glowing faintly, though when he blinked, it was gone. The inspectors hadn't left completely. They were watching, testing him even after their official visit. Ethan kept working at his repair shop during the day, fixing engines and cleaning tools, pretending life was normal. Leora came with him more often now, insisting she could help. She cleaned the workshop, sorted spare parts, and learned quickly how Earth machines worked. Customers who saw her were curious but charmed by her polite manner. To them, she was just a foreign exchange student or a distant cousin. One evening, while Ethan was closing the shop, Leora pointed to a broken generator in the corner. May I try? She asked. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You think you can fix that? She nodded. You fix things with patience and strength. My people fix things with energy and balance. Let me try. He shrugged and stepped aside. Leora placed her small hands on the machine. A faint light spread from her fingertips, seeping into the metal. Slowly, the generator hummed and clicked. Sparks flickered, then steadied, until the machine roared back to life. Ethan stared, mouth slightly open. You just, she smiled softly. I used what I know, like you do. In that moment, Ethan realized something important. Their worlds were not so different after all. Both of them fixed things in their own ways. Both healed broken pieces, whether it was machines, homes, or even each other, but their quiet days didn't last. One night, the shimmer returned. This time it didn't stay in the sky. It appeared inside the workshop while Ethan was working late. The same 3 inspectors stepped through, glowing and silent. Leora, who had been sweeping, froze at the sight. The leader spoke, its voice even colder than before. We gave you a chance, human. But your kind cannot be trusted. Already others have seen us. Already the balance is threatened. The decision must be made. Ethan stepped forward, his fists clenched. We had a deal. You said if I proved myself, she could stay. You proved your heart, the leader replied. But the heart is not enough. The human world is fragile. We cannot risk her knowledge being taken, her gifts being stolen. Ethan took a deep breath. His fear was real, but so was his determination. Then take me instead. If you think humans are a risk, test me again. Watch me, but she stays, Leora gasped. Ethan, no! The inspectors tilted their heads as if surprised. The leader's eyes glowed brighter. You would sacrifice yourself for her? Yes, Ethan said firmly. Because that's what we do. We protect the people who matter, even if it costs us. The silence stretched. Then, for the first time, the leader's voice softened. Perhaps there is more to your kind than we understood. The other two murmured in their strange language. Finally, the leader spoke again. Very well. She may remain. But your bond is now her shield. If you falter, if you break this trust, we will return. With that, the shimmer swallowed them once more, leaving the workshop quiet. Leora ran to Ethan, tears glimmering in her bright eyes. You would have given yourself up. For me? He smiled wearily. Of course. You're not just my maid, Leora. You're my friend. And I don't abandon my friends. Her hands trembled as she held onto his. Your world is dangerous, Ethan, but it is also beautiful. I think this is where I belong. In the weeks that followed, life slowly settled. The inspectors did not return. Neighbors stopped asking questions. The shop became busier than ever, and Leora became an important part of it, not just helping, but inspiring Ethan to try new ways of repairing, blending human and alien methods. Machines ran smoother, faster, cleaner. Customers left amazed, and at night, when the city was quiet, Ethan and Leora would sit by the window, looking at the stars. They're still watching, aren't they? Ethan asked once. Yes, Leora said softly. But maybe not with anger anymore. Maybe with curiosity, Ethan smiled. Let them watch. We'll give them a show. And so, the story of a mechanic and his tiny alien maid became something more. A story of trust, of resilience, and of two worlds learning from each other. Humanity, once dismissed as reckless, had shown again its greatest strength. The courage to care, even when the universe itself stood in judgment.